My name is John Trinterud, K9ONR. I'm from Walnut Creek, California, which is east in San Francisco Bay Area. And I designed a Winlink system for CERT. And the goal here is to get CERT a little bit out of the paper world that they normally find themselves in. And you don't often hear amateur radio, Winlink, and QGIS in the same sentence, especially when you're talking about CERT. So what we're going to show you is some things that we have done over the last 4 years in the city of Walnut Creek's CERT, and it could be probably adapted fairly easily to CERT organizations, or you may learn some new tricks that Winlink can do that you may not be aware of. So the goal is to get us into the digital communications world. So I'm following on big shoulders here. You've heard from Phil Sherrod and Oliver and George's on Radio Mail in the last couple of weeks. This is sort of like a case study of what we did on a lower level. And for the project managers among you, we're in our 4th year of a 2-year project, just so you get the drift of things. All right, so what I'm going to do now, if I can, there we go, give you a rough idea of where Walnut Creek is, eastern San Francisco Bay Area. We're 25 miles due east of San Francisco. We have 8 CERT command posts spread across our city with an EOC downtown. And we have everything from suburban sprawl to high density housing to a major transport hub, public transportation. The Bay Area Rapid Transit train runs right through us. And we have down here in Rossmore a 10,000 inhabitant senior center that has a 2-lane evacuation route in and out. So we have all sorts of challenges that may or may not be similar to what you folks have. The other thing that's unique about Walnut Creek CERT is we're sponsored by the city and not by the fire department or the police department, which is normally the case for CERT. So we report directly to the EOC at City Hall. And what they want us to do, on top of everything else CERT is supposed to do, is to act as the eyes and the ears as we patrol the areas. So here are our named command posts. These are actually taken from the old school districts in the city of Walnut Creek. We have about 280 active CERT members, and the real benefit we have is 130 of those are licensed operators. And that's because very early on, 12 years ago, Walnut Creek CERT standardized on ham radio instead of FRS and GMRS. And there's a wide number of reasons for that, but let's just say we're primarily like 98% ham radio at this point in time. So roughly 82,000 people in the city limits, 41,000 homes, front doors. Now, the EOC, since we report to them, has very specific reporting requirements. And this is what the agency is asking of us over top of what CERT normally does for a living. So they want to see rapid, citywide situational awareness that's sort of divided into 3 categories. If it's life-threatening, and this means normally you have victims in hand or you've identified trapped victims, things of that nature, that's emergency message precedents, and we report those as we find them. So those are individual messages. In similar fashion, you have major infrastructure. This is where if you don't do anything about it, you end up in life-threatening. So those are the 2 big ones, emergency and priority precedence on the messages. Everything else, ironically, including victims that we've evacuated, are treated as routine. And generally, we do an operational period report about every 2 hours, or the city and what we call the CERT liaison, which I'll talk more about, can demand that at any time from the command posts in the field, like, where are we? And so you know, the command posts are largely autonomous in their area. They have an incident commander, a full incident command post structure under ICS. So they're like little fiefdoms out there that each run their own survey teams for their area. So obviously we need communications to support all of the CERT search and or rescue operations. But the key point here is this is what our sponsor asks of us on top of what CERT already does. And I'm going to ask you to throw questions in the chat so I can deal with it. We got a fair amount to cover. Now, we had a couple of challenges in getting from paper to digital. And so the basic requirement was we could not depend on any infrastructure. No cell service, no internet, no commercial power. Commercial power of these three is probably the easiest to get around with solar, which we have done. Also, because our certs get called out for things like missing people, we are looking at other things where we do have cell service and the internet running. But this is the basic requirement. We got to be able to run independently. And then we have security from our IT infrastructure at the city. We cannot connect to their internal networks. We can't use their internet service. They don't want to see CERT email on their servers. And we don't have HF radio, but truthfully, as you will see, there's no need for HF in this arrangement. This is an interesting combination. And lastly, like every other CERT, we don't have any money. So the whole thing is supported by grants and donations. So these are the challenges that we faced. So the other thing that's unique about CERT is all of the communications are literally one hop and stop. The survey teams need to get their information to the command posts with what they're seeing on their tour of their areas. That's one hop. And then the command posts send their information to the EOC, filtered according to the criteria that the EOC asked to see. The EOC doesn't need to know that SAR Team 2 is out of water. They're looking for emergency and high priority infrastructure issues. So we're going to show you how this configuration is all tied together and how we adapted Winlink to these very specific requirements. Big advantage for incident acquisition is now we can do GPS-enabled messaging and transfer it to the command post. The command post then can filter and map for the criteria that the EOC wants to see. And then we have very specific incident display alternatives at the served agency. This is very much tied into GIS systems. So this is from a survey team in the field all the way to a GIS display at the agency. So here's the data acquisition and transfer piece. And thanks to some real advances recently, particularly on radio mail and Apple, as you saw in August, you now have your choice of 3 different devices. You can use WODE or Winlink on Android, on an Android cell or tablet. You can use radio mail on an Apple device, and you can use Windows with a GPS dongle and RMS Express. All of these work, mix and match, they're all compatible, and we use a new windshield survey template to gather the data in the field. And I'll show you what that looks like. We save the completed messages in the outbox. Emergency messages then can be sent via your existing procedure, or depending on how long it takes your team to work, can wait until you get back to the command post area. That may not be an option. You can also duplicate the manual message on a windshield survey form, refer to the analog message number that they got, and then all your incidents map from the area. Lower precedents are normally held in the outbox, and then we have a wireless access point in each command post, so we can do mobile team devices right straight into the command post with a telnet session. They don't have internet, remember, so telnet is not normally used. We can use it with a wireless access point. The other thing that's funny about this is a 2.4 gig part 15 unit. It's not even using ham radio frequencies. So we're not plugging up the air, the scarce frequencies by doing this. Now, that's data acquisition. This is the form that we actually use. So we're going to go over this slightly. This is called a windshield survey. The very first thing on the top here is a setup button, and that will let you change the title of the form to meet your specific needs. The precedent of the message matches the precedence training of CERT FEMA training. It's emergency, priority, and routine. We have local date and time, and we use a simple message number, which is basically the call sign or the technical call sign of the sender in a sequential number. It makes it easier to see than trying to repeat the MID, which Winlink assigns, and it's an easy way to do an audit trail for the search. They're used to doing this. It's the same convention that they use today. From and to on this form can be call signs. They can also be a work group like survey 1 to plans. This is not how you address the message. I'll show you that in a second. The CERT team ID, you can put your team ID and your command post in, like SAR1 or Survey 1 out of Rossmore. The incident address in this field is important because if the house is on fire, we don't want you standing in it trying to get a GPS fix. So we're going to let you put in a street name or closest address or landmark to orient the EOC to where the issue is. And then we have GPS enabled. We also put out the MGRS. There's some folks, I think, in Texas that use the military grid reference system. It may be easier to transmit because there's no negative numbers or decimal points to concern with. It's simply alphanumeric. And the other one that's kind of interesting is you notice 911 is on here. And CERT does not normally deal with 911. So I'm going to ask you to think about this from the recipient's perspective rather than you as a communicator or a survey team. We tend to get fixated on the incident that's right in front of us when we're reporting an issue. But let me ask you this. We have 8 command posts, and we've already dealt with this on drills where all 8 of them have a simulated red victim, and all 8 of them want to get that message across at the same time. That's on a voice net. With 911 in Walnut Creek, the county fire department and ambulance service are county agencies and not city agencies, which means the EOC can't call you an ambulance or a fire truck. They have to refer you to Contra Costa Fire. They have their own dispatch center, and that's how you get a fire truck. And the only way to get to Contra Costa Fire is through 911. So the real reason this is on here is if you can't reach 911 and the EOC begins to see a pattern where all of the callers can't reach 911, the real issue may no longer be your red victim. It may be that the 911 system is down, in which case the problem is a lot larger than your red victim. So that's why that's on there. Now, the next section here is about life-threatening incidents. This is the EOC's criteria. These are sample ideas, and you notice all of these are beyond CERT, but they're to alert the EOC as to what's going on in their environment. Major spreading fires, gas leaks, things of that nature. Every time you answer one of these yes, this little counter will increment, and I'll show you how that's used later. So life-threatening incidents at the top, major infrastructure, same idea at the bottom. And you have notes. If you mark any of these yes, you enter in the notes specific to that incident in either a section 1 or section 2. If you need to really explain more, you have an open text field down here at the bottom. When you're through, you submit it. So that is the windshield survey. It's universal. It could be used for things other than CERT as well. Okay, let me go on. This is the network we came up with. Remember, we do not have internet, so we had to create a standalone Winlink network. This is divided between what's in the field and what's at City Hall, and remember, we go direct to the EOC. So these are our customers, 8 CERT command posts, Public Works, the Maintenance Department Operations Center. There is a main and an alternate EOC site. And then these are simply our Winlink people. CERT EOC liaison is like a incident commander level person that sits in the EOC and can brief the EOC on what CERT is finding and what they can do. Zero is the dedicated radio group at City Hall that handles voice calls from CERT. And I actually started the Zero group. So what we put out in the field is a Windows laptop. It happens to be a Dell laptop running RMS Express. It has a Masters Communication DRA50 sound card, USB connected. We use a Linko DR135 radios and a flexible J-pole as an antenna. And to keep this all powered, we put in a Bluetti solar system, a solar generator and solar panels, and it's sized to keep the laptop charged and keep the radio running. It is not sized to light up the whole command post at night. And we do that only for the CERT command posts. They don't have standby power, whereas Public Works and the EOCs do. So that's the field arrangement. At City Hall, we have a radio room on the second floor that has a mini PC that is a standalone RMS gateway. It runs RMS packet and RMS relay acting as a post office. And we use the same kind of found card, DRA50. And here we have Kenwood TMB71 radios. There were 2 of them. We devoted one to Winlink, and the other is a voice analog backup. And there's a roof antenna, obviously. Now, the trick is that the EOC and all the other people that are in the EOC connect over LAN. They're not even on the air when this thing is running. So what you end up with is solar and battery power in the field. We have diesel backup power at City Hall. We're not using the internet, HF, or repeaters. Simply simplex VHF. We use VARA wide on a single frequency. So it is a pool of up to 9 people running without a net control. And these folks have been using ham radio communications to do this on an analog basis for 12 years. So they're very, very used to waiting until the frequency's idle before starting, things of that nature. We've not had collision issues with this. And one other thing also, because of the way we arrange this, we're using one VARA license for the entire network. That's another unique thing, legitimately. And remember, we don't have internet, so we don't have access to CMS. We use the local RMS relay as a post office, and CERT only goes one level up under ICS. So we send our messages to City Hall, and that's where they stop. So messages are deposited in RMS relay, and the recipient calls in and retrieves them. Now, the field equipment was funded by an RDAC grant, and I think the total amount was under $24,000 for all of that equipment in the field. And the Walnut Creek CIO, who's also a ham, bought all the equipment at City Hall for us. So that is a standalone Winlink network without internet and without commercial power. And this is what the gateway looks like. You have a simple little mini PC. This one is about a $350 computer. The advantage to it is it auto boots whenever power is restored in the interim between commercial power and diesel. It logs itself in and restarts the post office automatically. The sound card is sitting right here in the red printed box, Kenwood radio, and we use an HDMI dummy plug in the computer because Windows likes to believe it's always connected to a display. The other trick is you don't use a Bluetooth keyboard because if the computer doesn't come up all the way, Bluetooth isn't up. So a USB, the old style cheap keyboard and mouse work better. So that's the entire thing sitting at City Hall. And you notice it has handles, which means it's portable. This whole thing is 12-volt powered. So this you could put anywhere and have a post office for Winlink. And that's about, I think, 14 inches square. Nice small unit. And this is how you get between floors at City Hall. This is nothing more than an Ethernet patch jack and a couple of inexpensive TP-Link switches. This is standard TCP/IP networking connected to the LAN jack of that mini PC you saw. So if you address an email to Ciro or the EOC, it comes right in over the LAN, and these folks are not even on the air when they're operational. Now, our CIO told us we could not use switches on his internal networks, and then he giggled and said, but you're not on our internal switch network, so I'll hook these up to protected power for you. So that worked out pretty well. Now, let's go back to the field for a second. The normal traditional Winlink system, you connect to a convenient RMS, and then you go to CMS to send your message. But as you saw, our CERT messages go to the City Hall, and that's where they stop. But then we have this whole sea of people out here that are doing surveys. And the real question is, how do we get that information into the command post? And about the last thing we want to do is send them all by radio to City Hall and then have the command post call up and pull it all back when these folks are sitting 50 feet apart in a parking lot. So what we do, and this is a Thomas Noel trick, we added a local copy of RMS Relay as a local post office, and we built a wireless access point in each command post. And what that does is ties everything together. Now, most of you are old enough to remember going to a coffee shop and asking for their wireless password so you could check your email. It's exactly the same analogy here. You drive up to the parking lot, you connect to the wireless access point with your laptop or your radio mail on an Apple device or an Android tablet. You do a Telnet Winlink session and press start. You don't need to bother comms at all. This goes directly into RMS Relay, and we're using Part 15 2.4 gig frequencies. Messages stored in RMS Relay are automatically pulled into the command post laptop. And now all the stuff we did in the field is now available in plans and for the IC to figure out what's going on in their world. Now, this is another way of looking at the command post because we did a few more tricks. You have the wireless access point connecting. We actually put the laptop in plans and not in comms. And that's because you don't have to do manual logging of messages any longer. What that lets us do is, you saw how the field surveys units connect, but there's nothing to prevent us from tying the rest of the command post all together. And you can now share messages and issues and alerts and everything else with the entire team in the command post. Now, the way we do this, local users, they either have a ham license or we use a control operator. To be fair, all of our incident commanders are licensed hams, and a lot of our plans chiefs are licensed hams, because this has been going on for about 12 years. You can use any of these devices, including personal cell phones, if they're programmed correctly. They're not on the air. They're only connecting to the wireless access point and RMS Relay to send and receive messages. Now, what makes this magic work is a whole lot of tactical call signs associated with a single call sign for this entire command post. And the tactical call signs that Winlink Express allows you to do, you only enable one at a time, makes this whole possible. Now, how do we send information to the served agencies? And what do we send? So we can send individual incidents, or you can collect a collection of incidents, filtered, mapped, and forwarded based on what your agency has asked you to tell them about. You could also put and this has happened many, many times, you have an Aries, CERT, or RACES group in the parking lot because they're not allowed in the agency. All you need is an Ethernet jack, a weatherproof Ethernet jack, and you can send the emails directly into the EOC. Now, if you put in a Windows device running RMS Express, you can air gap it to where you're not using their IT infrastructure. If they won't let you do that, then you're dealing with manual transfer, printing messages in SneakerNet, and carrying paper back into the EOC. This is going to be a local decision at your end. So if the agency is willing to install RMS Express, it can be air-gapped and completely separated from their infrastructure. You might be able to connect the computer HDMI interface to their big screen, and they can display CERT incidents. So all the emails, situational awareness messages from the command post can be directed to any Winlink email account. We send it to the liaison as the single point of contact in our EOC for CERT. This is all done by amateur radio over that with VAR FM using the links I showed you on our network diagram. So now we have some incident display alternatives at the agency. If they're willing to install Winlink Express and a radio, you can send it directly to their email account, and the displays are going to be identical to what the command post sees, which is a significant advantage. You're both talking the same language. If they don't want to do that and they use ArcGIS, maybe they will let you send a CSV file in of all the incidents exported by RMS Express, and you can display the CERT incidents in near real time in their system. And if they don't want you to do that, we have QGIS, which is a free ArcGIS alternative. And I have the layer files available for the windshield survey and a wide variety of other things you can use. So you have some different alternatives you can present to your agency. So let's take a look at some of these capabilities. I've been running a Winlink advanced mapping class across Hawaii. We're in our second completion of the class now. We've also run one on the mainland, and I'll talk a little bit more about this class, but this is for folks who want to do some of the things we're showing you tonight. There's a complete class available to teach you how to do it. So here's what windshield surveys look spread across 2 Hawaiian islands. And this view was done in RMS Express, not in a GIS system. And so you can see where incidents are clustered. Now, if this was real instead of one student running around, you might want to concentrate your efforts here and maybe here in Kihei and up here in the mountain near Makawao. And we all know about what happened in Lahaina, which is right here in Maui. So this is what it would look like across a wide geographical area. The red pins on this one are emergencies. The yellow pins are high priority. And the white pins are where they goofed and filled out both sections of the windshield survey template. And so it said, okay, you want us to show both? Those are going to be white. So as these messages come in, they're automatically added to the filterable and mappable pool based on the template name you used, in our case, windshield survey. Everything on that template can be filtered, assigned colors, and mapped. So I want to show you basically, if you remember that little life-threatening incidents thing, and you notice if you mark any of these yes, like hazmat, this little counter increments. In other words, it's greater than 0. So what we can do is show you how you set a filter. If life-threatening incidents, if the count is greater than 0, turn the pin red. And what I actually did was I did another one on this same page down below here for high priority incidents. If that count's greater than 0, turn the pin yellow. And that's the whole filter. And what that lets you do then is look at a whole area and see a good detail of what's going on. So if we look at this area on the Big Island, which is Fern Acres and the Eden Rock CERT area, we've got 5 incidents, and you notice that some of them are hiding behind others. You have to zoom down a little bit lower to get that. But if you're connected to the internet, you can zoom all the way down to street level. Now, this probably wouldn't be necessary to get this low. You're not going to tell somebody, hey, I don't see your truck, because you don't need to be at street level to get a picture of what's going on. The real message is when you click on the pin, you get all the message details that were filled out on the windshield survey. So you have, and this is the subject line of the email, would have what it is, the precedence, the date and the time, who sent it, and the message number is right in your inbox message subject line. Where it is, the precedence, here's the team ID, and they actually was kind enough to fill out the address. Hawaii addresses are really interesting, and they're not really covered in the GIS very well. So this is why we put incident address on this form. You have one life-threatening incident, and it's a collapsed structure with victims, and here's all the details about the incident. And this is done on a windshield survey. So all you have to do is get down low enough on the zoom level to spread the pins apart, click on them, and you get the full details. So this really enhances your capability automatically or automagically. I kind of like automagically. You can do it by precise coordinates. You can color code them, and you can basically do it without internet or cell service with one disclaimer. I'm finding that you need the internet access to store at a specific zoom level. Once you download it, that map choice and zoom levels cached, for lack of a better word, and it doesn't require the internet to display them. Now, you don't need to go down to street level to see where a strategic picture of your incidents are. A bigger picture is probably a better idea, but you have another choice. You have to remember, and Phil touched on this 2 weeks ago, RMS Express is a communications vehicle. You have an export capability. A GIS system may be a better mapping alternative. Big advantage for CERT and their audit trail is every message in Winlink has automatic traceability, positive proof of delivery to the recipient's inbox, and it's on an automated communication log. The communication log alone is huge. We have 2 scribes, one at each end of a conversation, in 8 command posts, which is 16 people, simply recording messages. We don't tend to have that much horsepower anymore. You can also filter any of that information, and you can also search for text comments. As an example, if there is a delay in getting the ambulance to that location, you could search for the words ambulance, delay, show only those incidents, and then update the liaison that you now have delays in getting an ambulance to the command posts. One other thing you can do, which is a big deal for situational awareness, let's talk about live links. And this is the form data export capability in Winlink. This is a message that Thomas Noel sent me some time ago. It uses an older template, but the lesson is so good that it's really worth repeating. This is 90 incidents that were for a ham radio drill that was done in the Portland, Oregon area. And live links mean when you send this message to your agency, the links can still be clicked and you get the message details. So what this is, if you notice, this particular operator is in Ames, Oregon. His landlines are working, his cell phones are not, radio and TV are working. He doesn't have internet, but the mesh network in Gresham is working, and so forth. But the real message for us is you can send this whole picture, one digital message, one attachment to your agency, as opposed to 90 individual paper messages for situational awareness. This whole thing was 68 KB, and I sent it to City Hall in under 3 minutes using VARA wide, FM wide on VHF simplex. When they unpack that attachment and import the messages, they essentially have received 90 individual messages, and they have the same view as you do in the command post, which means, let's talk about this incident in Hillsborough. And you both click on the link, you both have the same message, you're both talking the same language. This is the automatic communications log. Date, time, message numbers, all of the information that you're going to need. This is what is currently done manually by scribes. And we have had very varied success. I live in a retirement community. I can faithfully report that doctors cannot write legibly. And it's also somewhat of a challenge if they can't write legibly to expect them to be touch typists, but that's entirely a different story. And the final indignity on this is the QGIS interface. Now, this is for folks who are told by their EOC that they cannot use ArcGIS. So we can run our own. QGIS is a free and fully functional GIS system. It's also completely compatible with ArcGIS. So staying in Hawaii, let's use the streets on the Big Island to show you how this looks. And the shape files that I used here are publicly available ones. Your real task, if you want to play with QGIS, is to see whether your agency or your county or your city has publicly available GIS shape files. So let's see how we can zoom in and plot incoming CERT messages automatically. And here are two on the Big Island. You saw the example of the Menpachi Street incident where the two victims were trapped in their collapsed home. And we have another one up here on Amakii Street where someone tried to refill a running generator with gasoline and started the house on fire. So these will pop up as the emails come in automatically with no intervention from you whatsoever. And the map automatically updates with comments. So what makes this work is one simple CSV file that comes out of RMS Express. Phil touched on this a little bit 2 weeks ago, but this is an example of how it can be used. This one CSV file drives the entire interface. It's automatically created and updated as the survey reports come into the liaison, in our case, or any other Winlink account. They come into your inbox, they're automatically extracted to the CSV file. You don't even have to read the messages to update the CSV file and the GIS display. The original emails are still in your inbox if you need to look at them. And how this works is QGIS watches this file. The colors and the labels are set by the message precedence, emergency, priority, or routine with your text comments. And we plug them in where the GIS location is on a street map layer. Now, one of the tricks we found was the shape files for Hawaii don't include the physical street address. But we have the windshield template incident address field. If it's plugged in there, it flows all the way through to GIS, and now you have the actual street address, all the comments, and a color code incident indicating that's a life-threatening emergency. And this is automatic. The display is updated as the reports come in. So it's about as near real time as we can get. Now, I've thrown an awful lot at you, and I know there's going to be some questions, but let me give you one other little piece here. If this is of interest to you, there is a complete mapping class available in 8 sessions. We do this weekly. We currently are doing it by emailed zip files. And the reason we're doing this as opposed to Zoom is my first class was split between Japan, Hawaii, California, and New Jersey. And trying to figure out a Zoom time and frame was not really possible. So we decided to go by email. We also have group exercises in this. So this is not a real good thing for an individual to try to do all by themselves. It's much better done in a group with ongoing support by your administrators. And there are 4 of us. So this will take you from GPS recommendations, clearing to QGIS in the space of 2 months with 1 lesson per week. This is available and it's free. And we're going to do our 3rd session in Hawaii coming up. And we'll do another mainland session as soon as we have enough students. So this is also available to you if this is of interest. And this is a big deal. This is an incredible collaborative effort. And there's some folks I need to call out here. Thomas Noel has put up with me for almost 4 years now, sometimes almost on a daily basis. And I am extremely grateful to him for his assistance. I'm also older than he is, so he's been very gentle with me. Oliver Dully and Greg are the template meisters that have done the remarkable things with the CERT survey template. Phil Sherrod is our programmer that makes all of this really possible. On the Walnut Creek CERT side, Don is my counterpart. I'm smart enough after many years of IT to do the design and not the implementation. So Don is responsible for implementation. He's also one of my QGIS resources. Margaret is another one of our CERT liaison and is the coordinator for Walnut Creek CERT. Mark handles all of our logistics and acquisitions. We have extraordinary help from our CIO at City Hall, Ray Lamb. And some of you use the field situation report template. It's a really, really good template. It's in GMT as opposed to local time, which drove us nuts on CERT. And it also asks for things that the EOC didn't ask us to cover, which is why we stopped using the field situation report and went to that custom CERT windshield survey. On the ARRL side, Joe Speroni is our contact for all of the Hawaii activities. He's a PACSEC section manager. Mike Patterson is my erstwhile boss, and we call him the documentarian. And if you don't know that term, that is a cross between a Chevron engineer, a technical writer, and a cat herder. And that's as close to a title as I could find for Mike. And then we want to thank the 16 members of the inaugural Winlink mapping class for all of their help and feedback. And out of that class came 3 new Winlink class administrators, Everett, John DeGood, and Bill Haiti. And Everett works on Maui at the EOC. He lost his home in Lahaina and couldn't find his family for 3 days. They've all been reunited, all safe and sound, and they are now living in East Maui. So that was a little too close to home for Lahaina. And lastly, we want to thank these wonderful organizations that made this possible: Winlink, Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, ARES, and RDAC. And what I'll do is throw it open to the chat. I'm going to stop the share, and we'll see whether we have any questions or any comments, or if I've stunned you into dead silence. All right. We face the same issue in Seattle. I'm glad to see that. Oops, let me get up to the top here. And Finn, I meant Ull, Norway. That's where my folks are from. And the IT in a secure VPN, that would be really, truly interesting. Remember that we don't have internet. So I'm not sure how good a VPN would do us, Steve. And then Dave said they had the same issue in Seattle. All right. Ian Scott, the latest forms to WODE. You have to create a folder in your Android system that is in shared space, download and unzip the files and install them in that shared folder, and then tell Wode where to find them. And I have full instructions on that. And you notice Phil came in here exactly right. The only trick is with Android, you have to put it in a shared area in the Android system. I'll put in a plug for Radio Mail here. Radio Mail does all of this import of the specialized templates completely and totally automatically. Yeah. You simply tell them what forms you want, and it'll go get them for you. Sending those, yeah. Oh, the other thing about voice, did you notice the street names in Hawaii? Would you like to do an I spell of those names? I would not. There's a checkbox, yeah, to cause it to update, and its update is an overwrite, okay? And you can reach me for the class K9ONR@ARRL.net. Mesh Network, we tried for a year to bring mesh into Walnut Creek CERT. All of our command post locations are hidden under trees at the bottom of valleys and behind buildings so we don't offend the neighbors. And our city hall is completely surrounded by trees. We don't have a clear line of sight anywhere. We spent way too much time trying to make mesh work. We simply don't have the sight lines to make it work.
Scott Reed.
Air gap connection means that we are not using any of their equipment. So all of our networks and everything else have to be completely standalone. That's why we use that wired Ethernet patch between floors as an example. They wanted none of their equipment used for Winlink, no messages on it or anything else. Individual welfare reunification requests, the answer is no, because CERT is not charged with that particular task. There are other forms in Winlink that would enable you to do those things. Reunification, probably no. There is an outgoing health and welfare message that does not expect to have a response. And Finn, thank you. You know where UL is too, all right? Mesh, we talked about a little bit. We would love to do it. We can't. See, live experience. Oh yeah, about our old folks. Yes. Thank you, Finn. And it's, yeah, John Trinterud, K9ONR@ARRL.net. The antenna systems in the field are an N9 TAX ladder line rollable or foldable dipole. We're only using VHF. Quick description of the form path. All right. You would fill out a form on an Android tablet or on a Radio Mail phone or on Winlink. It is transferred to the field command post by either a wireless access point. You could put radios in the field if you want that level of complexity. We tried to do the best we could with inexpensive equipment. The Android tablets we're using are $200 for a tablet, keyboard, and a case, and they work extremely well, and they have GPS built in. If we had to put radios in the field, it would be a lot more complicated and cumbersome. CSV file, you simply tell the GIS system to watch at a specific location on your computer, or dangerous if you ask the EOC to accept a zip drive, which they probably would never do. So basically that's the reason for QGIS. It can be a standalone GIS. The only thing you let them see is the display output, which prevents no security issues. Quick message is also great for health and welfare. Thank you, Oliver. Mapping and a Wode forms download. Scott, okay. Get in touch with me directly and I'll give you all the information. Roll-ups mentioned. Okay, thank you, Oliver. Location names are a challenge in Wisconsin. Thank you very much. Yes. Drug names. Oliver did quite a good story about doing hospital reports and resource requests with all of the drug names that would be almost impossible to spell phonetically. Yeah, I spent time in Hayward, Wisconsin myself, Steve. Okay, range of access points for folks not near a parking lot. Roughly 50 to 100 feet for a $32 access point. There are other access points out there. I don't know that you want to try to broadcast across the city, but what we were trying to do is provide something they could drive up, dump their reports, and go off and do their next route. And again, those little access points are GL-INET AR300M. They're supported by the Arden network. And so they're reflashed to Arden, which allows us to use them as a wireless access point fairly easily. And I have complete lessons on how to do that. Any other questions or qualms?
Well, Scott, you got your hand up. You want to take the floor for a second?
Excuse me?
Scott?
Go ahead.
Hey, John, real quick, couple questions. Well, actually one. So I'm looking at my county's, it's Placer County Open Data and Apps. It's their, for their GIS. So which file, CVS, KML, shapefile, or GeoJSON does QGIS take?
You're looking for a shapefile because that's a collection of files. If you import that, it will add a layer in QGIS with all the attributes and everything else you need. You're looking for a shapefile.
Okay, so I'm looking at, so they gave me several choices, like I said, CVS, KML, shapefile, and GeoJSON.
Yeah, look for a shapefile.
Okay, so all the shapefile, so my county does publish those on their website.
Yeah. Most of the cities and counties now, at least out here, are putting publicly available shapefiles out there. You may run into issues with addresses. Sometimes it's really easy to get street names, but not easy to get addresses on those streets.
Okay.
But you've got the addresses on the windshield survey form, as you saw me do in Hawaii. So that's okay.
So it gives me choices of either parcels and addresses, environment, planning and zones, boundaries and districts, transportation, and infrastructure. Those are all the overlays I can download.
Yeah, and you're going to have to play with that to see, because they're going to differ by every jurisdiction.
Okay.
Basically, what you're looking for is street names, or sometimes they're called street center lines.
Okay.
And that's what you're really looking for.
So if I was to download any of them, it would probably be the parcels and address shapefile.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Great.
And
Thanks.
you can always play. Now,
Great.
the other thing, if you're going to run GIS, you need a little bit of horsepower on your computer. That is a significant program. Don't try to do it on a 4 meg memory tablet or something. I'm running 32 gig on an HP laptop, and it does a real good job, but don't try to run it on a minimal equipment. This is probably best done for the agency and not necessarily for a command post.
No, I'm looking at this for our agency as well, and because we've got permission to load QGIS.
Wonderful.
So
yeah.
So I'm just looking at those different things. And last but not least, I will email you directly for the mapping class and the instructions on how to download to the Android app.
Good. And as far as the class is concerned, CERT is a team sport. And if you get a CERT group and you got some communicators that want to learn this, that's utterly ideal for that class. Being an individual, you're going to get rather frustrated if you don't have anyone to talk to or anyone to help. Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
All right. Bill in Washington, drop me an email and I will be more than happy to do this presentation for other groups. I will tell you right now, you see that already that I make a lot of use of animations and pop-ups. So trying to do this as a PDF flat file is going to frustrate people. So I would sort of like to, I need to talk with the RATPAC folks about that. Okay. Any other questions from the peanut gallery here?
You can get a hold of me after or sometime tomorrow if you want to discuss that file. Bill's got his, Bill, go ahead and take it.
Well, I just wanted, I know RATPAC is recording this. I didn't know if eventually they'd publish it on their website.
We record it, all the documents that come with it are also posted.
So this will not be available on your website?
Yes, it will be.
Oh, okay.
Like I say, we post the video that's being recorded right now, plus any of the documents made available will be available off the website.
Okay, thank you.
Quite welcome.
Steve Waterman, I am working with Joe Speroni and all of his folks on the Aries and Races, and also with a wide bunch of those folks in Hawaii. Thanks, Oliver. Thank you, Phil. Okay, 2 gig to ham frequencies on the wireless access points. You're right, that's the -1 and the -2 channel. We are using channel 1, which is not a ham frequency, if that helps. So we're not tying up scarce frequencies on the wireless access points. Any other questions?
I don't see any hands up.
All right.
We're gonna send well, yeah, we need to have some documentation sent our way that we get that all posted.
Okay.
Send it to myself, if you would. K7REX@ARL.net.
Will do.
Okay. One more call. Any questions out there? How about some comments? We got some comments out there, folks. Well, you're wrapping this one up right on the money of the 1 hour, aren't you? Appreciate that. Okay.
And this was the minimum one. We went a little longer at the National CERT conference. They asked so many questions, we never even got to the demos.
Wow.
Thank you, JT. I've been watching CERT for a number of years, and this is absolutely the most creative amalgamation of the amateur radio service and CERT. Hats off.
Thank you, kind sir. This is what we were trying for. We got to get them out of the paper world. You know, because they're drowning in paper and they just don't have the horsepower to do that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, who does?
Yeah, who does? Exactly.